Business is simple. It's just not easy. We focus on three things to help you run and grow your business more easily: talent, sales, and how to scale. This is the Talent, Sales, and Scale Show. Hey everyone, Bryan Whittington with this episode of the Talent, Sales, and Scale Show. We have Desmond Dixon hanging out in Greece, for goodness sake. So that's pretty cool with his fancy hat on. So check him out on the video. So he is the founder of CXO Republic. And today we're going to be talking about something that we haven't really hit, but ties to the episode on pricing, is scaling. It's not all about the numbers, or is it? So let's talk about that. So welcome to the show, Desmond.
What's up, man? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So one of the topics that we always, or one of the questions that we always ask is, why in the world should we listen to you about scaling your business? So give us a little bit of background. Why should we even listen to you on this topic?
Okay, well, first off, I am a born sales guy. I first went to school for engineering, but I decided I like people and I didn't want to be stuck in a room by myself all day. So ended up jumping into sales. I failed my first time in sales, my first internship, and that fueled my fire to know that I want to be a sales guy, and helped me actually build multiple million-dollar books of businesses and helping other businesses in all types of different industries with my methodology and my problem solving. So this is something that I've grown into, and I'm continuing to perform at a high level in.
Okay, now that's pretty interesting, and we'll jump on the topic of scaling. It's not all about the numbers, is it? In a second, but now you said that you failed the first time. As an engineer, you failed the first time, and now you're doing this. Talk to me a little bit about looking back at that, what was maybe your biggest mistake or biggest reason or reasons that you think you failed that first time?
So I was doing door-to-door sales with some friends in college as my first sales job. And when I look back on it, I did not have the social skills like to pick up and persuade, and I made it more about myself than it was about them. And what I learned in terms of in every industry that I went in, like doing big deals, six-figure deals, some almost touching 7, it was really about staying obsessed with that person's desired outcome and not attached with what the order looks like. And that was like the first big aha moment. And so if I'd have did that, I would, after knocking 1,000 doors, I probably would have got a deal. But that didn't happen back then because I didn't understand that psychology. Right.
Now, how did you come to find this?
It started with Simon Sinek's Start With Why video. It's an old video with 3 circles and
the golden circle.
Why? Yeah, the golden circle. Yeah, and so that really fascinated with me. So I started, my energy started to be like, okay, what is their why? Like, why are they having this issue? Why are they having this problem? So I started to, get deeper into the conversations with my clients, which obviously builds more rapport and more understanding and more clarity so that you can actually solve their problem rather than being on the surface, stuck on the surface with the what's and the how and all of that. Okay,
so then you really started to focus on the outcome. You were an engineer that came out of this, and something else that you said, which is one of the critical key things to sales, and I think most people miss this, right? Most people think it's, hey, how are you today? And it's all about the personality and being big personality and relationship or empathy. And yes, it's a little bit of that. But then you also said problem solving. So help me understand, how did you take this idea as focus on their goals, problem solving, and engineering? Can you tie those together for us?
Oh yeah. So here's the part you're gonna love, Bryan. Here's the part. I did millions of dollars in 3 different industries that I had no clue with. And it didn't matter that I wasn't an expert in those industries that I was selling in. What was crazy was I was willing to ask the questions to understand what their current situation was, ask questions on what are their expectations and actual goals. And then I had certainty around, okay, here's how we usually solve these problems and solve these goals. So getting agreement on fundamental beliefs, right, to get to that goal, and pretty much created this space where they met me halfway, right? Like I was like that emergency phone call, right? Like, hey, I'm in this situation, can you help me out of this? Because I was willing to hold space, and then just like, if I didn't know the answer, find the person with the information. And I'm a big fan of like connecting people too as well. Like if I am not a good fit, then I'm going to connect you to the right person who is a good fit. Right. And then that person in response also sends you business because like it's energy. Right. So like being more of an abundance and just obsessed with getting them their goal and not getting money in your pocket. Because we can go into a whole nother topic of signing deals just to sign deals, right? Because and that's a whole nother topic we can get into another episode. But
we'll likely
just being obsessed.
Yeah, we'll likely touch on that a little bit. Now, you said three things. One is understanding their goals. Two is understanding their expectations, and you dropped the third one. I can't recall what that was.
Getting getting alignment on a belief structure.
Yeah, their beliefs. Okay, now help me out with that, right? Because clearly we understand their goals. Now, how much of this did you find that they weren't able to identify their goals? They didn't really even know what those were.
So from a psychological perspective, even though I might know what they want, it's important for me to have them tell me that. And then for me to connect that desired outcome to what I provide and solving whatever that current pain point is in that situation. So like, even though I might, I've done my research, I know this company well, it's still important for me to have them express so that they know that I know that I heard them, right?
So it goes into that active listening. Yeah. So, and if they express it, then they own it. Whereas if you tell them that same thing, they're not going to own it. Okay. So then, so you identify the goals. They express those goals, what they really want, and then the expectations. So talk to me a little bit about what expectations did you set? Because that's pretty broad topic. Can you narrow that down a bit?
Yeah, so it depends on the client. Sometimes I'm a big fan of just being radically honest. So if someone has a big, hairy goal, right, like some Jim Collins stuff there, then you got to be realistic. Like, hey, if you want to get to this goal, you are expected to perform in this manner. Like, it's just not going to be a cherry on top. Like, in order to get here, this is what the order of operations, the SOPs, like, here's what we expect from you in order to get to that goal. If you don't meet up to that challenge, then you probably won't hit that goal. So like being radically honest and not just saying like, oh, sure, but they have to understand expectations on their end as well. And then also expectations on our end of like, hey, here's what, because a lot of salespeople just sell just to sell. Like, hey, here's what you could expect from us to help you get there, but you need to meet us halfway, right? It's a dance. It takes two to dance.
Yeah, and you know what? I used to think that it was meet them halfway, but what I found, and you can push back on this, Desmond, what I found is they have to be willing to put in more work than you, right? So you're talking about this from a consultant perspective, and what I found is, this stuff is good enough, and I'll take you there, and you just get the rest of the way. But if they don't understand those expectations and the work involved, they're not going to do it, right? What I'm finding is a lot of people are in love with the idea of success. They're just not in love with the idea of the work and the frustrations and the fear, doubt, and worry that it takes in order to to achieve that goal. So I'm not sure if that's kind of what you're saying or if I'm missing the mark off of that.
No, man, I mean, you're hitting it, man. I mean, at the end of the day, like you have to show up, right? There's going to be situations where things are going to come up that you didn't plan for, right? There's going to be surprises, and the name of the game is staying in the game, right? Like that's it, right? Like you just have to stay in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you said, so once we identify their goals, lay out the expectations of this is the work that's going to be there. We just lost your picture there. I'm not sure if you're able to pull that back, but this is the work, the expectations to be there. And then the last thing is beliefs. Talk to me a little bit about what you meant by beliefs, or what beliefs you're talking about.
Yeah, so it's super important to like have alignment in belief systems, right? It's almost like aligning incentives. So for instance, if I believe in, I'm just using this as an example. If I believe in Facebook marketing is the most appropriate way to scale based upon your market, and if you believe Google ads is the best way, right? Then we have a misalignment on beliefs. And if things go right, you know what I mean? Like it's a misalignment, right? So we have to believe in a path, like here's our path to get here. Like for instance, if I believe that, you need 2 sales guys to scale a month, and you say, no, I need 4, I believe I need 4, then like that's a misalignment on beliefs, right? It can even be within methodology, right? Of a certain way of doing things. Like you might be more like, you might say, hey, we need to be more heart-centered and maybe have a slightly longer sales process in order to get more higher dollar deals, more enterprise level deals. And if they believe like, no, we need little onesie twosies, quick hitters, because we need more velocity around our sales, like that's a misalignment on beliefs. So like just aligning beliefs from, the methodology all the way to, execution is key in order to have like harmony and congruency throughout the process, right?
So in reality, then what you're really doing is reverse engineering this. You identify the goals. Why? Now, you didn't say this, but I think this comes into with expectations. Identify the goal. You brought it up, Simon Sinek's golden rings or golden circles, whatever those things are. Start with why. So the goal, the why to hit that goal. Why is that important? Set the expectations of what is going to be, what the workload is going to be, almost an SLA, right? Service level agreement between the two sides of, you say you're going to do this, we're going to do this. You also talked about milestones, so good project management, dates, timelines, responsibilities, accountability. And then you talked about beliefs. This is going to be the approach. This is the philosophy that we're going to engage in. If we're not in alignment here, let's not even get started. So is that kind of the idea of what you're doing there?
Absolutely, because there's nothing worse than being halfway through a process and then the client not listening or not doing what's on the roadmap. Right. And then, delaying results. Right. So yes, exactly it.
Now, why do you this is going to be an opinion question. Why do you think that people do that? Why do you think that salespeople allow that, or even buyers allow the ambiguity to happen?
Control, right? Usually it's control, right? Like we want to control the situation for the buyer perspective. And the sales guys usually are just like, hey, I need to do whatever it takes to get this deal because they're incentivized to close a deal, right? So you have those two different incentives, right? Like this buyer wants to, have control over the process. He's probably used to having control. So someone coming in and him relinquishing a little bit, surrendering a little bit of control is probably a little bit uncomfortable. Usually, that's what I usually see most of the time.
Yeah, I would think control is likely it. And just hypothesizing here, another side is maybe a fear of, I don't really want to know because I don't know, right? I just want this to happen. So they're sucking hopium, right? And they hope this is going to work, but they don't want to really dig down and look at the work at it. And I think the other side of that is fear for the salesperson, fear of losing out on the deal. And the last thing might be a little bit of a laziness, right? We don't want to do that. I'm finding that a lot of people don't want to do the heavy lifting of thinking, right? The preparation and the pre-work to really plan this thing out to see if it's even a worthwhile goal. But again, I'm not sure if you've seen that or not, or if I'm all wet on this.
Oh, man, it's shiny object syndrome, I think, as well. Right? I think it's that, like, oh, wow, here's another shiny toy. Oh, I heard this on the podcast. Oh, I heard this. I read this in the book. Oh, I talked to a friend about this. Right. And it's like not staying disciplined and focused on one particular channel, one particular process, like to like finish something out to completion. Right. I have clients right now I'm dealing with like, yo, we need to stay focused. Like, we are like, you just closed 70 grand in like 2 deals here. Like, let's keep doubling down and like focus on this channel. Then we can worry about licensing. Then we can worry about, other, alternative channels to scale. Like, let's focus on, this process that we've already committed to.
Yeah. Now, and so it's a curious thing, right? So there's a couple of different personalities out there. So it's that shiny object syndrome. And a lot of times that goes with technology. I'm looking for the easy button, the magic pill. And I've found that there really isn't a magic pill at all. So it really gets to, don't buy the shiny toy, don't buy the technology until you have that system, that process laid out, because disaster will ensue. My gosh, do I have some scars to show that one. So really get that down. And then the curious thing is those that are doing this, right, that have that forethought to go after it. If you look at, you're familiar with a book called Attraction, the Entrepreneurial Operating System by Gino Wickman?
I am not, but now I'm going to buy it.
Yeah, check it out. So
Yeah.
nothing new under the sun, right? Whether it's Peter Drucker, whether it's Scaling Up by Vern Harnish, whether it's Mike Koloski or on Clockwork or EOS Traction by Gino Wickman, they're all saying the same thing, right? It's staying focused because, and I like Wickman, where he talks about there's a visionary and an integrator, and that visionary has all the crazy ideas and all of these wonderful thoughts, and they want to go, 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 and they never want to finish anything. So there needs to have that that integrator, that finisher, the person that doesn't get bored, that sees it through to completion. And knowing yourself, right, that authentic self, and play to your strengths, go in your flow, make sure that your team is aligned to that you can withstand that shiny object syndrome and not be sucked into it, like, you know, the sirens calling to your death of the rocks as your ship crashes into them, right? So let's take all of this and tie it into scaling, right? Because what we've talked about, believe it or not, absolutely, my sense is absolutely aligns with what we're discussing here, right? So you're saying that scaling isn't all about the numbers, but that's not really the case. Can you unpack that a little bit more? Whenever you say it's not all about the numbers, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so business at the end of the day is really, really good math. And a lot of society gurus, books, you know, there's so much different media, so much noise, really just hammers in on need more clients, need more clients, need more clients, need more clients, because there's really only three ways to scale. There's obviously more clients, like there's selling more to existing clients, and there's selling at a higher price. So like raising your prices. And to me, in my personal opinion, the easiest thing by far is selling more to existing clients. And then the second easiest, which can happen overnight, I've seen this happen time and time again, is simply raising your prices and having your offer have your value ladder and your upsells baked into it, like naturally, like it's a natural buying journey. So this works in software, this works in services, right? Obviously, this has worked too well in e-commerce. Let's just like have some type of subscription model. But a lot of people think that they need to get more clients in order to scale. And I can break this down in simple math, just using my business model as an example, so that you know the audience has some background here. Being a consultant, I could charge $10,000 to $20,000 per client a year easily, right? And have little upsells. I know the math, right, of the impact of my services. So if I'm saying, hey, if I can help you do, just using round numbers here for simplicity, if I can help you get $1 million in additional growth, right, without spending a bunch of money on advertising on lead generation, and if I say I'm going to take $20,000 as a retainer over a year, and I'm going to bake in $50,000 to $70,000 in the performance milestones as you hit your goals, I would be paid for those performances. Then besides me needing to get 100 clients to get $1 million in revenue, now I only need 10, right? So the numbers, right? So like, and the thing is like getting 100 clients requires more operational costs, and it requires more support. It requires like, it's a larger headache, right? So I can grow by just unlocking value in my existing relationships and my existing contracts. And then I also am a big fan of baking in additional services that the client might need 6 months, 8 months, 12 months down the road. And software companies, some really successful software companies use this kind of approach as well. Snowflake, right? Every email marketing services use this, right? Like every new client you get into your email server, they charge you more money. They charge you per the contact. So that's, in my opinion, my favorite way of scaling, right? You can obviously do the vending machine approach, put money in marketing, get money out, right? You can do that approach. It works if that works for you, if you have a predictable model, but I'm a big fan of unlocking value with your existing customer base.
So talk to me a little bit more about that. So whenever you say bake in your upsell, so I think the example that you gave was Snowflake, or call it the HubSpot model, right? The more contacts you have, they charge you by contacts. So how do you bake in? Can you give us maybe 2-3 different examples of baking in your upsell in different verticals?
Yeah. So, this is good. So an example, let's just say that you're a service-based business, okay? Let's just say you're a service-based business, you work in the lead generation space or marketing space. You know that the client, like this is like level one, right? Like, you know that they need, you know, X amount of services to get from 100,000 to 1 million, okay? You know, once they hit 1 million, they are going to have a different subset of problems. And you know the math to this because you have experience with this in the past. Like, you know, like what it takes to go from 1 million to 10 million is different than what it takes to go from 100,000 to 1 million. So then you just bake in that next level into the contract, and you add an option to extend that contract, right? Or you do a rollover, right? So now, besides having to go through the sales process all over again, you're just continuing the relationship, and they already know how much they're going to spend with you, right? There's also the performance model, right? In venture, you could do some type of venture service company where you can say, hey, I want to be your partner because I see a lot of value being possibly unlocked. And I want to get a retainer to pay for my costs. And then I want a percentage of the revenue generated, which is probably one of my favorite business models. I want most of the time it's like 25%, 20% of net revenue, right? So then you're turning these $50,000 contracts into the hundreds of thousands of dollars of contracts, right? Which I have one right now, which is worth $1 million contract because I know the numbers between 1 and 10 million, right? And I know what it takes. And so as soon as we hit 10 million, I'm getting a $750,000 bonus because I know the numbers, right? Yeah. And it's in there, you know, so, I mean, I can go in for days with different models to bake in your upsells. Also, you can bake it into your viral loop, right? So, so let's say if you have a product or service or newsletter or some type of growth engine, you can bake in your upsells in, like to incentivize your customers to share, share the products, right? Or products and services. So this is a pretty savage one. Sorry, I'm getting excited because I love this one. So if they refer you to a certain number of people, you might give them like, you might give them more favorable pricing on what they need next, right? So you're essentially enrolling them to not only spread your word, but they have already got like the sunk cost fallacy, like they've already invested time and social capital. So now they're for sure going to buy your next upsell because they just earned this 20% off or, like this some type of incentive to get that next cookie, right? Yeah. So there's so many different ways you can like bake in like different incentives and it's really aligning incentives really. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what you're doing.
Now, I'm curious, how did you come up with these or how did you start studying this?
First of all, I'm a student, man, always and foremost. Like, even though I'm a guest on this pod, I'm always learning. And I learned this from a client of mine. His name's Sam Cook. You should check him out. He's the owner of James Cook Media. And he got me hip to the performance-based model. And it really changed blew my mind of, wow, you don't need to like always get more clients. You can do these 4 or 5 clients, 10 clients, and just make a ton of money and over deliver and work with dream clients, right? You don't have to deal with the headache ones. And that really blew my mind. And it went down, I kind of, went down a path of doing it myself, and it was way easier to sell, right? Also, Mr. Alex Ramosi, he's also with $100 million offer. You should definitely read that book, which we could talk about offers all day, but I think that he's probably one of the best people in the game in terms of like offers and and he talks about like creating something irresistible and how to unpack offers. I think that's a really good book, which he kind of goes into the kind of stuff. So that's definitely a resource I'll give to your audience. I mean, for sure.
Now, and it was almost a throwaway line, but I think it needs to be unpacked a little bit. You said it's way easier to sell. I have my hypothesis of why it's easier to sell, but why would you say these more lucrative, more profitable deals are easier to sell if you do it this way?
Because you align the incentives, it mitigates the risk for the client, right? And there's a lot more upside and margin on the back end for the organization if you know your numbers. Yes, it's a risk on your part, but if you believe in yourself and if you know if you go to a person, like for instance, if you go to a person like this one lady who's one of my favorite clients, I met her at a wedding. And, we're just talking. I had no intention of selling her anything, right? We're just talking. And I'm like, yo, like you are only charging like $900. You're the best in the world in this. You should be charging $20,000, right? Like easily 20,000. People are buying it, like not even like second guessing it, right? So I'm like, if you know the numbers of where their current situation, this goes back to problem solving. Like if you know their current situation and you know what's possible for them and you can see that path, then like your certainty and your energy around that, and like they will align with that, right? And it makes it easier to sell because now you're aligning the contract to them hitting their goals as well, right?
Yeah, and that's what I was expecting you to say, because if you reduce risk, they don't mind giving some. If they spend $10 to make $100, they're fine with that all day long, as long as they can tie that back to you. And going back to something that you were talking about a little earlier, there was a study, I want to give credit, I believe it's to the Boston Consulting Group, but they say this: if you break your customers into quartiles, and you might know this, but if you break your customers into quartiles, your top 25% is likely 150% of your net profit. And then the bottom 25% is a major loss. So that's how you can have 150. Your middle 25% is a break-even point, and your bottom middle 25% is a break-even to loss. So if you just focus on that top quartile, that's where you're making all your profit anyway. And that's where most of us, me guilty of this as well, you think it's grow, grow, grow at all costs and add customers, but all you're doing is increasing labor costs, which are most expensive, most headaches, technology. I mean, it's just nothing but, I don't want to say nothing but headaches. There's a definite upside to it as well at some point. But if you can focus on those core customers, that's really where you're making your profit. So unless if you're a SaaS company, just know that, you know, if you build it, and the more people you add to it, you know, the marginal cost of customer acquisition is next to nothing, and it doesn't really cause any more grief from a customer service or headache. Yeah, do that all day. And that's the beauty about SaaS. And God bless it, that's an awesome business model. But if you're not that, then you might want to really consider what Desmond is saying. So let me just pause there. And I don't want to speak for you, Desmond. Is that kind of what you're sharing or saying?
Absolutely, man. Grow slow. Most businesses die from indigestion, not starvation.
Yeah. And it was curious. There was a gentleman that he talked about finance and how to do your records, bookkeeping, finance for your company. And he said that almost every single company that goes into bankruptcy is coming off their highest revenue, top line revenue year, because you can't sell your way. And this was a mistake that I made. You know, I'd like to say once, but you can't sell your way into prosperity. You have to have profit your way into prosperity. So it's kind of a curious dilemma. You can't have just sales. You need the sales, operations, and finance all together, or you're sunk. It looks like you have something to say on that.
Oh man, I have a lot to say, because this comes back to like I've seen so many business owners. I've seen it happen time and time and again. I've been in tons of conversations where people just think they need more business, and so they get the wrong customers. Yeah. Right, as well. Like they're willing to like sell to whoever is willing to give me money, and then all they're doing is bloating their operational costs. And if that client doesn't have a high LTV, lifetime value, then it becomes more of a like you said you're pushing those clients down into like they're costing you money. Yes, it looks great on paper at the top line, but your bottom line is suffering because now you have to, like you said, bring on, you know, operational expenses and labor. And then obviously you have a training situation, right? When you bring on people, there's a lag time there, right? Which, you know, as a recruiting guys, you understand that there's always that buffer period. So that's why I'm a huge fan of like unlocking value of where can you serve your like how can you like get your people, like your clients, like further along, and how can you profit from that as well, right? Because like it's
I was just going to, so speak to that person that says that's newer founder. Mm-hmm. Easy for you to say, Desmond, I need the money. I just need revenue coming in the door. Speak to that person.
If you need revenue coming in the door, The easiest thing to do is obviously leveraging your existing network, right? And focus on getting in front of the right people, right? All it takes is, that one conversation on a podcast, or just giving value at a conference, or like just getting in front of the right people and finding the right person is way more lucrative to your future self than just getting any person. Because let's say I found someone who will give me money. Now you're focusing all your time, energy on that person that might not be a perfect fit. And now you're losing the opportunity cost to get in front of that right person, right? That person that might share have a great experience with you, and then share it with their entire network, and your business just exponentially grows with more customers like that, right? So I think patience, but at the same time being aggressive is important, like having the awareness and the willingness to also say no, right? is just as powerful. It's super powerful. It's a superpower at walking away from deals, which you can also go into an entirely dark conversation about that.
Yeah, I had a really good mentor of mine, a guy by the name of Bruce Bickle. He said the most powerful leadership tool that you have is a 2-letter word, and it's no. Right, yeah. Being able to say no, and that takes a lot of guts to be able to do that. Now, you said leveraging your existing network. So, how would you suggest that people leverage your existing network?
Okay, so if you're just starting out, as in you're starting from zero, I think being of value to other people as fast as possible is most important. So I hate saying doing things for free because I'm a sales guy, but being willing to show value and get social proof is super important. If you're a person that's already doing revenue, you're like, man, I'm stuck on a plateau. I think creating your own media, getting in charge of your own media is a smart move. So a podcast, some type of content, something that's giving a value to other people that is your own internal media, I think is super important, because then you can start to leverage that media with, in PR, which to me is a whole, man, I got introduced to PR and I'm like, man, this stuff is amazing, which PR, all you're doing is giving people access to information that they want, right? Bloggers and writers and content creators, right? You're just networking with other content creators and doing collaborations with them. And now you're getting access to their audience. They're also getting access to your audience, right? And so you can grow that way. And then if people see that you're associated with all these different brands, then they're going to obviously elevate your brand up there with them, right? So, man, that's one of my favorite little hacks, man, is find people who have access to very similar, the networks that you want to be a part of, that, very similar clients. And maybe you guys don't do the same thing. However, you might serve the same people so you can be of value to each other. So joint ventures, right? Collaborate, being abundant, being willing to give is super important, and not being in a scarcity mode of I need to hide, this is all my stuff. This is me. This belongs to me. That's what, to me, stifles growth and also opportunity, because you never know who will introduce you to someone that they read or watched or seen you somewhere of a brand that they, associate with being in high regard and high integrity. So
yeah, so it's really finding a value that you can give, and then building centers of influence, right? People that are never going to buy from you, but they're selling to similar type people. You're not necessarily competing. And I would even find some frenemies, right? Those friendly competitors, because if you scale, if you grow, you're going to oftentimes not have the bandwidth, and you don't want to turn people down. So if you have people like-minded, likability, then that might be a way that you could white label or subcontract in some different ways there. So having that mindset of abundance is a key there. Now, go ahead.
I was going to say, the reader should read our listeners should read Go Giver by Bob Berg. That's where that book changed my life around business. And it's the reason why, I'm personally crushing it, was mainly because of that book of just giving. Nice. The more it's an abundance of resources, money, clients,
Now let's hit the value, right? You look fairly young, unless if you age really well. Talk to that younger person out there that maybe has a bit of struggle with a little bit of imposter syndrome, maybe doesn't believe that they have the value. Talk to that person. How can they identify the value that they can deliver? Because I think that would be a key piece that people would need to know.
So there's a few things. One is find people who you aspire to be and get in their sphere of influence, right? Like get in their orbit, like mentorship, consume their content, right? Like ask people questions. Look, here's what I learned on my journey. Successful people are willing to help aspiring individuals if they see that they're willing to put the work in, because I wouldn't have gotten where I was without people mentoring me, right? I have a mentor who's been mentoring for 2 years and didn't even charge me, like super high level person. Like, I just want to teach you because I was obsessed with like, yo, I want to know what you're doing, right? So, and I'm paying it forward to people, who need help. Like, hey, what do you need help with? I'm doing these podcasts, right? Because it's all about like helping the next wave of people, right?
Yeah.
So that's number one. Oops, sorry about that. Got attacked by my light.
Yeah.
Number two is really just getting out there and doing something. I think in getting evidence of you doing something, I think that's super important. So like, I know that I used to struggle with this, and I've seen some other people struggle with this, but like analysis paralysis, so never starting, or like hiding in I call it dark room syndrome. You're hiding in a dark room, like always working your project by yourself, and you don't tell anyone about it, and just don't do anything with. You're always planning for years or months, right? So I think just getting out there and starting somewhere and being willing to fail and getting used to failing, because in that failing you're going to learn, and then you learn how to be successful. So I think that's also an important part of it.
So a lot in there, but I want to start off with failing. So that's the biggest piece, right? Because I think it's fair to say you're going to fail at some point, right? I can't remember who I was talking to. I'd like to give the person credit, but said to me, listen, unless if they failed before, I will not hire them, because I don't know how they're gonna handle adversity and struggling through and fighting through. So talk to the people out there. And I know that you did a segment recently it's on your LinkedIn on failure. So talk a little bit about failure. Speak to that real quick, please.
Yeah. So what's crazy, this is also very prevalent in sales as well, with deal with a client. We always think in what ifs, right? Like, what if this happens? What if, this goes wrong? Like, we think in like, what's the possibly worst thing that could go wrong? We also think about what could go right. Maybe I'll be sunshine and rainbows and live in a Lamborghini and so we think in what ifs. And what's crazy about the evidence of failure, like I failed multiple times in my life. And what I realized in failure was it was not as bad as I thought it was going to be. And I think that was a very important moment in my own journey of failing, because you realize like, wow, this is not a big deal. And you get back on the horse and you learn again. And then you can share those failures with even your clients, right? like I think vulnerability, and it's a big strong of character, if you're willing to like have the humility and like say, hey, look, I failed. Like, for instance, I'm a sales guy and I failed at my first job selling. I failed like miserably, like bad, right? Like not good. I got fired, right? Like didn't even make it halfway through the summer, right? And so, but in that failure wasn't that bad. Like I was still in the game. I can get back in. I have the ability to access skills, access knowledge, access people to get better, right? And then and it gives you great contrast when you win. So when you do win and you do hit that success, you have this beautiful, like, this contrast of like, wow, like I know what it takes to get from A to B, right? So yeah, I think getting failing out the way is it just proves to yourself that it's not as bad as you think it is, and you learn why you failed, and you learn not to do those things again, and it helps you be more successful, obviously.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the keys. So taking a tactic from this, so you can take this, is in your brain, work through what's the worst that can happen. If I fail, what's the downside? And really, and a lot of people, they think positive thoughts and blah blah blah. Yeah, okay, do that, because you have to be an optimist, but you also, if you look at this and you say, hey, if I fail, this is what's going to happen. Can I live with that? And the likely answer is yes, right? And so make sure that you can live with what failure is. But when do you hear the learning? The learning isn't, oh, I had this awesome success, here's what I learned. You never hear that, right? Oh my gosh, I failed miserably, here's what I learned. That's typically when you hear it, and it's amazing the growth that comes out of that. So now, you said that you failed a couple of times. So how did you continue to get back up? How did you stay mentally? What were some of maybe the mental exercises that you did to get out of that? Because I mean, when you fail, it hurts. So how did you work your way through that?
I think the first thing is sitting with it and creating space for it. Like at least for a day, a week, right? Like whatever your process is, but like in actually acknowledging it. Something that might happen, you can either deny that you actually failed, which I think denial is the worst, man, to be perfectly honest, because you're not recognizing the pattern.
Yeah, then
and
you're a victim, you can't fix it.
Yep, just sitting with it. And sometimes the answer might not even come right away, which is you might have an epiphany like 3 months later after you started something new or you're doing something new, or sometimes it could be a year, right? But just sitting with it, getting space and getting back up and doing something and focusing out, right? So like for instance, I'll give you an example of another failure so that, the other audience of context. So like my first business, Joylistic, right? When I left corporate, I left millions of dollars, like $1 million deals on the table. I was like, I'm gonna go and bet on myself and I'm gonna do something on my own. And I was pretty successful with it when I first started. I was in 3 cities, all these different, co-working corporate spaces, doing holistic wellness, bringing holistic wellness to the space. And the pandemic came, right? And shut everything down. The offices are closed. No one can touch anyone, no massage therapy, no acupuncture, none of that. So like an external situation came in and threw a wrecking ball on my business. And so I had to sit with that because I was like, man, like this hurts, right? Something you care about, like it hurted. And when I created that space, it allowed other opportunities to come in where people like came in, they asked like, hey, how did you do this? Right. And so I didn't think about being a consulting as a business. I actually stumbled into this, Bryan. And that led to me being now I'm like doing $1 million deals for my business, right? Because I created space and then I focused out on helping other people.
Interesting. So, well, my gosh, I didn't realize how long we've been going here. So let's rapid fire these last couple of questions here. Then, whenever you look at people who want to scale, not just for growth's sake, right, but scale for profitability, scale for lifestyle, what's the biggest challenge, mistake that you see most people making that prevents them from doing it?
Not having rock solid operations.
That was not the answer I was expecting. So so talk to me a little bit about that, because that seems pretty boring.
I know it's super boring, but like not having systems in place, not running everything efficiently. Like, so having like leaky buckets, like money, but like productivity, not having everything documented with your team. So if someone leaves, you know what I mean? Like just, it's usually the things that's unexpected that happen that slow you down and create stress, right?
Now, most people, let me push back here a little bit. Most people will say, no, I'll do that later. Why am I going to plan this out? I need to do. I don't need to plan. I need to do. I don't need process. What would you say to that person?
Well, you should have someone internally always doing it as you're going, right? Like this isn't something it's like something you're consistent, like it's built in your culture, right? Of like systems and reporting and like making like you should be doing this as you're growing, right? As you're doing business. This is something you do at the end of the year. Like it needs to be in the culture of the company.
Yeah. All right. Got it. So really baking that in, and I'll throw out here real quick, like talked about this earlier, Clockwork by Mike Michalowicz. If you go to chapter 5, step 4 in building process, he likely has the easiest to follow way of building out process. So wholly agree with that. And then best business hack for scaling the business, I think you just gave it, is operationalize or process. Any other keys that people should really do?
Yeah, baking your upsells, see where you can unlock value and like stay like your customers' desired outcome is your North Star. And as long as you stay obsessed with that and just, really like helping your customers grow, you will naturally grow.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
like that. So really being others focused, that's your North Star, everything to do that, and then radical candor to speak truth to your client as to, hey, this is what the problems are going to be. So bake into when we get to that point, here's going to be what you'll need. Now, my guess is you probably have a good centers of influence partners that whenever they hit that level, then you're bringing in those partners to hit that scale and you get a rev share off of that.
Yeah, so it just really depends, right? Like I'm a big fan of like joint ventures, referrals. Last night I brought someone in with a client like, hey, we need to do this, this strategy here with you guys. So like you're pretty much, yeah, once again, like you're just obsessed with the desired outcome. You have the ability to ask for help, ask for support to get your client to the desired outcome.
Got it. Okay, love it. And then resources that you recommend. So you talked about The Go-Giver by, was it Bob Berg you said?
Yep, Bob Berg.
Okay, and then Alex Ramsey about offers. Can you say that one again?
Yeah, $100 million offer by Alex Hermosi. Highly recommend that book.
Okay, and then you
Really
also
good.
talked about Sam Cooke. Is that someone that we should follow as well, or?
Yeah, you should definitely look up Samuel Cook, storytelling in a digital age. He's a really good marketer and using storytelling. Pretty much, I use a lot of my, my approach is definitely through storytelling.
Love it. Success leaves clues, like you said. What's the future hold? What are the trends that you see coming down the pike that you're like, oh my gosh, or hey, this is pretty cool?
I have something in left field. You ready for it?
I'm waiting.
I personally believe that based upon the psychology of the market I think NFTs are going to have a very interesting space in all industries. Who knows what that's going to actually look like at the end of the day, but what's going on with, once again, like follow the money, follow like really successful people. A lot of successful people with influence and money and resources are going into this space as early adapters and like really smart people, like people even Google, Facebook, like working for big brands are moving into this space. And I think that based upon like the buying behavior and like what they're doing with changing customers into communities is something special. Right.
So NFT. So a lot of people might not know what that is. So hit real quick. What is an NFT?
NFT is a non-fungible token. Is essentially just think of it as like it could be a collectible. It could be, most people from a business perspective, I see it more as a utility. So like Costco's, membership card, right? Like that could be a form of an NFT where if you have this NFT, you get access to the club, you get access to get in, right? So it's accessibility is really the big thing with it, like in association. So let's say if Obama, Donald Trump, and Bill Gates and Elon Musk are all in this one club, right? And they have this one NFT.
Which will never happen, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm just using it as an example, right? The brand, it's like branding, right? Like you're associated with that brand, right? And so it's a very fascinating space. And I think that it's for sure going to be very disruptive in the future.
Well, I'll tell you what, if those couple of people get a club together, I'm in.
Yeah, sign me up, take my money, right?
I'll be fly on the wall on that one. Ooh. All right. So, hey, Desmond, who should reach out to you? How should they do it? And why should people reach out to you?
Yeah, so you can find me at cxorepublic.com. You can also reach out to me by LinkedIn. That's probably my most, active social media. You should probably reach out if you're interested in, going from, a certain plateau to another. I love sales. And if you want to, really use some of these strategies where you're unlocking value within the company and scaling something a different way, then, I could definitely be your guy. I'm a big fan of quality over quantity, right? So if you don't believe in that, then like we're probably not a good fit. But if you do believe in unlocking value in your existing customer base, then I'm your guy.
Sounds great. Hey, Desmond, really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks so much. Hanging out in Greece, making life happen from actually putting into practice what he's doing. So congratulations on all that you've been doing. Really appreciated the conversation. And hey, everyone, do me a favor, get after this. read those couple of books, put the application into it, identify your goal, why you're going to do it, set those expectations, align your beliefs with what you need to do, and then find some help, create those centers of influence, create that community around you to support you in that success. It's not a Lone Ranger sport. We got to be in this together to help one another. So thanks so much. Let's get after it. Thanks, Desmond.